SG Reads.
Hello fellow travelers, my name is SG and welcome to the channel. Today we'll be going over the Marvel What If Season 3, I guess you could call it series finale, the small epilogue if you will at the very end, that showed a short montage of different possibilities of different characters coming in for possible later seasons or being just a possible entry into the What If series or in the overall Marvel universe. Now I do think that a lot of people said that these are much more interesting than what we got in the main series overall. And I thought it'd just be fun to speculate what the storylines could have been or what could have been later on from at this point. So for right now, we're just going to talk about these different, I guess you call it clips, and just speculate what the storylines would have been, what they would have insisted, and how they would have progressed in their own worlds or in the Marvel Universe as we know it. Again, if these are representations of different already existing projects, such as the comics or even if the VR games or something like that, I am leaving those out and dedicating this to more of just the MCU / the cartoons that have been introduced into it already, because a lot of these are taking from the Sony saga as well. So for right now we will have to just stick to either the main MCU storyline and the connecting Sonyverse and so on and so forth along with the cartoons to kind of build upon the story overall. Everything else is just a side note, but may be referenced later on. Alright, with all that being said, please leave a like, comment, subscribe down below. I'd really appreciate it. If you like this content, please subscribe and like as well. And let me know if there's any other projects or any other things that you would like me to check out. I really want to talk about these things and try to figure out something that would be interesting for the viewers or the audience of these projects later on. Thanks again for watching, and let's get started, shall we? Now, we'll be going down the list of appearances throughout the 15-second clip. So, starting off with this whole list, Six-Armed Spider-Man. Now, as most of us know, the Six-Armed Spider-Man is usually an event that happens once for every Spider-Man when they are fully embracing their abilities, or when they're going through major duress. This usually happened in the original animated series and has been introduced into the comic books as well shortly after, as an effect of the radioactive spider bite, turning them into a spider creature known as the Man Spider. Couple of things I want to note while looking at this image. You could tell that the second pair of Spider-Man arms has more of a low grade or aka Ben Reilly kind of web shooter if you will. So that shows that they were made in sort of a rush in a way. While at the same time the suit does look more traditional and a little more put together, or just recently put together if you will. So with that being said, I'm going to have to place this during the No Way Home movie. Mainly because if we were to put this somewhere, it would have to be somewhere where he's mainly going through some sort of duress, like I said. And where he would have to make a suit in a rush, whether he liked it or not, that would be able to go alongside his other arms. And it definitely seems to fit with where we are in the story. I don't say this for No Way Home, not because of the arm thing, but because we barely see the other suit in Far From Home. And that doesn't seem to be the right fit for this kind of storytelling anyway. We do know that the main sense of stress is in the No Way Home movie. So for the most part I would have to place it there. And that it is shortly after he is revealed to be Spider-Man that the arms probably come out. Where they are in the middle of going through the legal troubles of being Peter Parker and Spider-Man. That he is feeling these sort of emotions, dealing with the loss of Tony Stark, while at the same time having to go through the idea of his own identity being revealed. And we would have seen this being kind of symbolic, if you will, with the other characters in the movie, such as Dr. Octopus, Norman Osborn, Electro, seeing them go from a man back to a monster, and this being more of being related to him personally, seeing himself as becoming a monster but wanting to stick to it. Now, whether this would have stuck with a darker ending of him going out and trying to seek revenge against Norman Osborn for the death of Aunt May, and in the process of that final confrontation, turning fully into the Man Spider, and then having to run off, leading MJ and Ned to go hunt him down and look for where he may be next, disappearing into the crowd and or into the shadows. So that could have been the what if for this picture. It still would have been interesting and fun to think about, and it would have been interesting storytelling and gone along with the overall movie's main ideas and concepts of great power equals great responsibility, and those who take advantage of their powers to take whatever they want. Next we got Shogun Ghost Rider. aka Robbie Reyes, for the most, because we could tell from the symbol on his chest. Now, this I think fits with a other world telling of the Marvel Universe. Like we've gotten the Western style, the Knight style, or the medieval style. This one fits more with an Edo period, if you will, with like this style of samurai, ninja, and all that, where we would have had the Ghost Rider being more of a spirit of vengeance, looking to strike against those who feels he betrayed him. So we would have seen more of a Marvel Edo, if you will, where the mutants are called yokai, aka the Scarlet Witch and the Quicksilver version of them, along with every other character in the storyline, consisting of different characters appearing in kind of an Edo style outfit, if you will, such as the Ronin coming back as a Ronin, so that would have been interesting as well. Now that would have been very interesting and very fun episode, I think, to do, mainly because the comics do cover this kind of era as well, and if they took more from that, adding on to their own storytelling, it definitely would have been interesting to see later down the line. Again, I may cover those comics as well as we go into the future. Our next one we're going to cover is what if Riri Williams became the Punisher. This one's a little more self-explanatory, because this one's what if in the war between the Wakanda and Tolokan, what if Tolokan won, basically. This is the what if Ironheart was never created and never turned the tides of war in their favor. Instead, Riri Williams cowered away, in a sense like that, leaving Namor and his people to win overall, and probably go on to cause more war in the rest of the world, feeling that they have finally taken over Wakanda and their technology, and have increased their own tenfold, leaving Riri Williams to kind of dwell in her own cowardness, if you will, and instead become a spirit of vengeance, if you will, and don the appearance of the Punisher and go seek revenge against Namor and them. So I do think that that would have been an interesting story along the way, and could have definitely added more into the Namor's kind of perspective, if you will. So for the most part, that would have to be my best guess of what happened in the story, using the movie as a reference, along with what we would have known. So that definitely does seem to be the direction it would have gone. Now this next one may not seem that interesting, but when you get down to the details, it actually very is. And this one is, what if Gamora married Star-Lord? Now this one kind of goes alongside with what if Thanos never made the sacrifice for Gamora for the stone overall, insisting that he failed in his overall mission by not wanting to do this, and walks away from the overall kind of goal he set out for himself. With that being said, Gamora is the only one, other than Thanos, who has the information of where the stone would have been. So, with her survival, she would have gone back to the Guardians of the Galaxy, and would have ultimately married Star-Lord several years later, or maybe even just a few months later. But she would have been hunted not just by Thanos' forces, who have since disbanded, being disillusioned by Thanos' weakness of not wanting to sacrifice Gamora, by all those that wished to get the stone for themselves as well. So that would have shown that her and Star-Lord probably would have kept running the rest of their lives from people trying to get the last bit of the Infinity Stones. So that probably would have been the overall story, along with the idea of having a small feel-good beginning, but ultimately leading to kind of this bittersweet ending, if you will. Now we have Moon Knight Blade, which I'm really not going to talk about right now for the most part, because that will be brought up in the Marvel Zombie series. But if I had to guess, the storyline overall is that after Blade is resurrected, after Blade Trinity, the spirit of death, if you will, has found him as well, granting him immense strength of the Moon Knight, while at the same time giving him the ability to exact his revenge over Dracula, the one who killed him in the Trinity as well, continuing on hunting vampires along the way with newfound abilities and newfound responsibilities, having to go along with the Moon Knight's overall mission and goal that we see in the series as well. Again, this one's just my speculation, and we will see more of him later down the line in the Marvel Zombies, which I do think is going to be amazing, especially if they get Wesley Snipes to voice Blade as well, which I do feel that he will ultimately at the end. Now the next one is the Wolverine Thanos. Now this one really got me excited for this video, period, and made me really want to talk about it. Now this one I would have to say take place shortly after the fight on Titan amongst the Guardians of the Galaxy and Tony Stark, Spider-Man, and Stephen Strange. In this version, we had Peter Quill not interrupt the fight, and did not, in fact, question where Gamora was. Instead, just went along with the plan overall. And this one, Thanos did lose the remaining Infinity Stones that he had in mid-fight. But before they could finish him off, he managed to get the Space Stone and teleport away, somewhere off planet to where he would recognize. Knowing that he had lost and is badly wounded at this point, senses that it might be his own weakness in his own body that he could not defeat the forces that were against him, as small as they were, such as with the Guardians and the small Avengers they had. So he goes to the one person that he knows would be able to modify his body to a greater sense, one that he used for both Gamora and Nebula in the past. But this time he would have more demands, so he needed to go someone a little higher, and with that he went to the High Evolutionary. Now the High Evolutionary manages to remember a certain creature he met on Earth when he was originally scouting for different beings to advance when he was looking for raccoon species, and he remembers a creature with a healing factor that was unlike he'd ever seen, but was more feral and was designed with bone claws. While he didn't really know what that creature was, nor really wanted to abduct him because of how wild he was inspired by it. And when Thanos asked for an all-end improvement to his own physical form, and his inner form as well, meaning his abilities, the High Evolutionary took his chance to use his strong body to enact these changes that he's always wanted to. So with that, he gave him a healing factor that was not surpassed by anybody else. Gave him bone claws that would be high predator status for anybody. And a bone skeleton that if anybody tried to punch him would automatically break their hands as well. With that, he was even able to give him high senses of an animal that he had tested on before, making him the perfect alpha predator, if you will. And with that, Thanos would then be set to return to Earth to collect the rest of the stones, or wherever they hid him, period. Then that would pretty much have to be where the story ends from there, for the Wolverine Thanos. But what do you guys think? I think that would be a very interesting story, along with introducing kind of this mad scientist vibe for the High Evolutionary, more than we've seen in the original Guardians of the Galaxy 3 movie, and more of a kind of darker take on it as well. We have Iron Man Kingo. With this being said, this would have definitely been more along the lines of, what if the Eternals had been involved in the original Thanos invasion, or even the original invasion from Avengers 1, using the abilities that they had definitely would have given them a plus, but if they went to S.H.I.E.L.D., aka Stark Industries, Stark would have definitely built them each their own armor suit, if you will, creating an Armored Avengers kind of thing for them. Each one having their own set abilities and an increase using the nanotechnology that we would have seen later on. Then making them kind of recurring characters throughout the series, here and there. So I definitely think that would have been more of the direction that would have gone overall, and we would have seen them how they would have reacted to each character throughout the movies, maybe even going their own separate ways during Civil War, one side going with Iron Man, one going with the Captain America's team. So I do think that that would have been the overall idea. What would the Eternals been like if they had been active from the very beginning of the Avengers saga? Now this next one was very interesting to talk about, mainly because I really didn't know how it would play out, and how these two timelines would have met, considering that they're both very much apart from each other, about 10 years in the storyline at least. But this would have gone, I would have to guess, what if Hank Pym went to the Quantumverse first and got lost instead of the Wasp? This leaving Janet Van Dyne to take over Pym's kind of research along with his company, but ultimately because she didn't really know how the overall science worked out, or how to stay the business afloat without Hank Pym, she would have ultimately relied on S.H.I.E.L.D. and Stark Industries, mainly because she didn't have a born hate of either one already. This was more Hank Pym's hangout overall. So ultimately she would have still be working on it, going along with what she thought Hank Pym would have done, but would have been trying more to relate to her daughter, trying to make her a home overall, leaving this Wasp character behind, and at the same time trying to grow along with Stark Industries and S.H.I.E.L.D. And ultimately, this would have gone dormant for a very long time, mainly because they don't know much about Pym particles without Hank Pym himself. only with a small kind of test, if you will. And it would have been later on until they were actually able to expand upon it when Tony Stark would have actually noticed it. So you could say that one day at a Stark Expo that was being visited by Kamala's class, much more like a Peter Parker style of storytelling, when we all of a sudden would have been attacked by a mysterious creature or people with the yellow hornet outfit, if you will, or the yellow jacket outfit, if you will, leaving her to have to fight the yellow jacket with what little she got after trying on the Wasp outfit and having her shrink, but at the same time her powers awakening at the same time, giving her a new vibe and a new identity with the ability to shrink as well as the ability to grow her fists. And with people seeing how well she was able to actually fight back these invaders, if you will, whether it have been Ghost or the Yellow Jackets, they would have wanted to take her in, aka S.H.I.E.L.D., but I think Janet Van Dyne would have taken her in to train her to be the next Wasp, teach her how to use the shrinking abilities along with the growing abilities from Hank Pym's era, and definitely would have become more of a mentor, turning her into the Wasp, but she would have taken the name Miss Marvel, considering that's her idol overall. Next we got Sorcerer Supreme Hulk. Now this one would have to be, what if Bruce Banner went to Kamar Taj, aka Tibet, to learn how to control his rage, or the Hulk as a whole. Now this would have definitely been the idea that it would have gone off the original The Incredible Hulk movie with Edward Norton, but instead putting in Mark Ruffalo at the very end. So this one would have had Bruce Banner go to Tibet and go to learn how to calm himself, trying to learn with the sorcery either to separate him from the Hulk and or give him control of the Hulk. But there they would have told him that he would have had to make peace with himself, learn to cooperate with the Hulk, if you will. And ultimately he agreed to this, and after many years of training and mastering sorcery, him and the Hulk have finally become one. But not only that, they have learned to control magic and become grade A at it. With that being said, he would have later on joined the Avengers as a Sorcerer Supreme, where he would have fought Thanos along with the other Avengers as well. So that definitely would have been an interesting story, and would have shown him being the master to Stephen Strange, who would have joined later on in the storyline. So it could have been fun and would have been interesting. Not really Maestro, much more just an older, wiser version of the Hulk that we know. Now this one would have definitely been a joke episode, mainly because it's such an outlandish and funny idea that after the events of Multiverse of Madness, where she thought she had made the ultimate sacrifice to save everyone, it turns out her ability saved her, but turned her into a weaker form of herself, aka Scarlet Witch the Duck, or if you want to say Wanda the Duck. There she would have found a great loss of power for herself, having to learn in a world that she didn't create how to control her abilities from the ground up, as they have been nerfed to pretty much the lowest they could be. And this would have definitely shown her rise to power, but also shown that she was becoming a better person slowly down the line, learning from everyone around her and seeing the next generation of Avengers, along with those that she knows and loves, maybe coming and going. So this could have been a very bittersweet kind of episode, but at the same time an emotional one, showing that she is still around, but she is in fact learning to fly again, if you will. If ducks can fly, that is, which I'm pretty sure they can. Now this Hawkeye we get is more of a dragon newt kind of character, so this kind of tells me that this would have gone with more of a Dungeons and Dragons kind of fantasy world, set in more of a alternate version like we said with the Edo period. And this would have definitely not been any different, where they would have shown the different types of creatures, such as, again, as we say, dragon newt, or maybe slimes, or something along those lines of keeping it in the realm of fantasy, while at the same time kind of expanding on the characters. So if anything, I have to say this was more of an isekai kind of characters standing. Like what if Tony Stark woke up in this world at the very end of the Avengers 1. But again, that's just a fun idea of embracing kind of this mystical realm with the MCU as well. So Now this one would definitely have to be, what if Jubilee became Herald of Galactus? Now we can tell that because it's showing her kind of like a Silver Surfer kind of character, but at the same time, it kind of looks like the original cover for the Silver Surfer issue number 1. Now this is definitely taking place in the X-Men 97 series, mainly because we can tell from the way Jubilee looks and with her jacket, but this is kind of mixing it with the original Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer storyline. But I think for storyline's sake, this would have been, what if Galactus attacked the X-Men instead of the Fantastic Four or Avengers? And here they would have tried everything they could without the interference of the Watcher to help them along the way, and ultimately would have been defeated by Galactus and his heralds. Ultimately, they probably would have beaten the Silver Surfer, or the Silver Surfer would have defended them as he did in the original Fantastic Four series, and would have left Galactus without a herald overall. And with that being said, Jubilee would have come up to him as the only survivor and or one still standing to make a deal with Galactus to spare Earth, and she will go out and look for planets for him to devour. He would have taken this and turned her into the Silver Surfer, or I guess if you wanted to say the Silver Jubilee, if you will. Now that definitely would have been an interesting story, and definitely probably would have taken an hour overall, but it definitely would have been worth it and would have been a fun storyline to see, especially if you're mixing the Fantastic Four storylines with an X-Men storyline, especially using the X-Men that we got in the cartoons as of right now. Now, what if Captain America was a Skrull is definitely a reference to the original Secret Invasion storyline, where it turned out that for a good portion of years, it turned out Captain America was just a Skrull who just forgot he was a Skrull, had become so into his own persona that he doesn't even remember when the transition was. So this would have to work in the same vein, taking place after Captain America Civil War, where Captain America has been absent for quite a few years. They could say that he was captured by the Skrulls and was put on ice along with all the other people that have been replaced by Skrulls during the Secret Invasion series, and that for the most part all the Captain America appearances after Civil War have been the Skrull version of Captain America, mainly because he just happened to be indoctrinated in his own way into believing he really is Steve Rogers at the very end, even willing to make the sacrifice for himself, or maybe even realizing that he's a Skrull at the very end and sacrificing himself to the Skrull cause. And this would have come full circle in the Secret War storyline, or the Secret Invasion storyline, where they would have seen all the people that were captured by the Skrulls, and Steve Rogers would have been one of the big ones they had caught, right next to Rhodey. So that definitely would have been an interesting story, and especially would have gone in line with the comics, seeing that Captain America being a Skrull for the majority of the series, and may have set people into a less than favorable degree, as they were in the original run of Secret Invasion. This next one would definitely have to go along the lines of, what if the Eternals was more inactive in the storyline from the very beginning? But this one would definitely be, what if Cersei was the original Avenger, or the first Avenger if you will, saying that maybe she knew Howard Stark back in World War II when they were originally creating the super soldier serum, saying that she got involved in the war in an effort to try to coexist with humanity, trying to work with the military and overall government. So that definitely would have been a storyline that would have been interesting overall, and definitely would have had some merit in kind of world building with the Eternals being here on Earth. But then again, that just goes in line with, again, like I said, what if the Eternals was more prominent in the overall MCU storyline? Okay, now I know I skipped one for right now, but trust me, I'm saving it for the end because I think it's very interesting. For right now, we'll see, what if Hela was pruned by the TVA, much like Loki was in Kid Loki's storyline. This one has to rely more on that she was not doing what she was supposed to in the correct timeline, so the TVA was trying to prune her and send her to the end of the world, if you will. But ultimately she managed to get out, but was lost in the timeline overall, and was able to meet an older Thor and older Loki later on in the future thanks to the TVA's technology. So this is going more in line with, what if Hela kind of survived young in the MCU canon storyline, if you will. So this is pretty much taking what if Loki was replaced with Hela kind of style. So I do think that that would definitely be an interesting storyline. Or even if you just wanted to place her in the end of the world with the Lokis, along with all the other discarded characters or discarded people that would have made no sense in their alternate worlds, would have been very interesting as well. So that would have to be the storyline I would have to go with for her. And it would definitely been interesting to kind of develop it later on. Or even have her just being a recurring character throughout the series. Kind of saying that she is traveling through time and space herself in her own right, against the Watcher's eyes, using TVA's technology against them, even after they have pretty much crumbled at this point. Alright, this next one was also an exciting one to talk about, and this one is, what if Shang-Chi became Star-Lord of the Ten Rings? Now this one definitely involves a lot, much more taking from the original what if Black Panther became Star-Lord kind of storyline, where we go in the same vein as that, where Shang-Chi is actually picked up when he's very young by the Ravengers. But in this storyline, much like the Black Panther one, we go with the idea that he turned the Ravengers into sort of a Ronin group, if you will, or kind of a clan, if you will, learning of martial arts, training each one to become honorable in their own way, where they became more of ghost-like heroes, if you will, traveling throughout the stars. And in this storyline though, Mandarin and his wife would have been heartbroken by the disappearance of Shang-Chi, because while he was meant to go away sooner or later, they did not expect him to just vanish off the face of the earth. So we then have Mandarin, in an attempt to look for him, succumbing to the darkness as in the original Shang-Chi movie, and trying to scour the earth for him, taking over basically the earth, and going into the stars as well. And when Shang-Chi returns as Star-Lord himself, confronts the Mandarin and ultimately defeats him, he becomes the holder of the Ten Rings, becoming a force that not even Thanos could fight at the very end of the day, along with his 10 rings. So that would have definitely been an interesting story, and definitely would have been in the same vibe as another story would have seen later on, but giving its own twist and giving its own ending would have definitely been something to see, and would have been a fun storyline to focus on after all. Alright, and for our last one, that would have acted more of a mix of a season finale / series finale, would have been, what if Deadpool killed the Marvel multiverse? Now this would have been a what if Deadpool had joined the TVA at the very end of Deadpool and Wolverine, or should I say at the very beginning, where he took the deal and became one of their enforcers, pruning different universes, or if you will, going there and just pretty much putting a stop to whatever multiverse issues that there were. This would have definitely been an interesting take, and I think would have been a season finale, series finale if you will, because this would have definitely had this vibe of him getting rid of characters that we weren't going to see again, either causing destruction throughout the multiverse and leading the Watcher or the known Watchers to create another multiverse Avengers and or Guardians against the Deadpool invasion. So that would have been interesting, that would have been fun, and we would have seen a lot more interesting deaths or a lot more interesting character development for both Deadpool and all the rest of the characters. This would have been different, and I think would have been led by, I want to say, either Captain Carter again or Shang-Chi Star-Lord. Either way would have been fun and interesting, and I think there's definitely a lot more they could do with it later on in the future. So for right now, that's how I would have to leave it. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know that this is a little different than what I'm usually used to doing, but this is just something experimental that I thought would be fun to do and interesting along the way. So I hope you guys enjoy. If you have opinions or have a different version of what storylines I've said, please leave it down in the comment section. Or if you guys have something to say about the different images yourself, please go ahead and say them down below too. I would like to hear everybody's different takes on what these characters could have been, what their storylines would have been, and we will see later on. So for right now, thanks again for watching. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe down below if you like this content, or if you have something you want to suggest me to either talk about, discuss, or even just to see and review, please leave it down in the comment section. Alright, I hope you all have a great day, and see you next time. Have a good one.